My name is Walid Shu'aibat. I come from two parts of this world. My mother is an American. Met my father in Humboldt State College. Now it's Humboldt State University in California. She fell in love with my father, and she was 9 months pregnant after she got married with me, and she decided to take a trip to the Middle East for a visit. And during that visit, she gave birth the first day she arrived in Bethlehem, Israel, and she wasn't permitted to go back to her country. She couldn't use her return ticket. She was given this child with a birth certificate that says father Muslim, mother Christian, the son Muslim. So my religion was decided for me instantly at my birth. I didn't have a choice in that matter. I grew up from two sides of the family, an American family and a Middle Eastern culture, Arab culture family. My Arabic grandfather, he was a Mukhtar, the chieftain of the village of Beit Sahour-Bethlehem. He was a friend of a notorious figure by the name of Haj-Ameen Al-Husseni. I don't know if you've ever heard of this figure. He was the Supreme Muslim Council. He was a regular guest at my grandfather's house. Haj-Ameen is also seen with photographs with Adolf Hitler on the eve of the final solution to the Jewish problem. In fact, Haj-Ameen Al-Husseni urged the Hungarian Prime Minister of Foreign Affairs not to allow 500,000 Jews to go back to the land of Israel. All 500,000 Jews died in the Holocaust as a result of his plea to the Hungarian Prime Minister of Foreign Affairs. From my mother's side, my great-grandfather was well connected with another notorious figure by the name of Winston Churchill, who wanted to destroy Nazism. I know very little about my mother's heritage, her side of the family. Winston Churchill would visit my great-grandfather in Jericho, California every time he got to the States. I have newspaper articles even to prove it. And I knew very little about my mother's faith, how she felt about things and her religious convictions or her Christian convictions. And, my father was stationed in Jericho. And in Jericho, I remember at 6 years old, I remember the 6 Days War. I remember we were clamoring behind Jamal Abdel Nasser to destroy the Jews and throw them into the sea. I remember many things from my childhood. I remember Israel won in 6 days, and they kind of rested on the 7th day. And Rabbi Goren blew the shofar at the Wailing Wall and declared Jerusalem the eternal city for the Jewish state. Of course, my father was crushed. My mother was kind of elated and very happy because she said it reminded her of the story of Joshua with the walls of Jericho, because the story of the Joshuan conquest was the 6 Days War as well, because on the 7th day, if you look at the biblical text, it says very clearly, early in the morning, before the sun came up, they went around the walls of Jericho 7 times, and Israel basically was established as a state. So she said that as a Presbyterian. She studied that in Sunday school, and it was pleasing to her. Of course, I had no choice in the matter of what school I went to when I was a young kid. 3rd and 4th grade, I remember going to a Christian school. My father and mother put me in a Christian school so I can learn English as an early language, as an early, at the early stage, because they didn't teach English from the 1st and 5th till the 5th grade in the government school in the Palestinian areas. I remember one time I decided to walk into the Bible study at our school. And I wanted to study what the rest of the kids were studying. And the bully stood up. He wanted me to leave the class because, number one, I was an American. Number two, I was a Muslim. You don't belong here. The teacher said to him, you better shut up and sit down because it seems that he's the only one that wants to learn the Bible. So I learned my first year, 3rd grade, good Bible study. 4th grade, my teacher, Hani Ouda, was a Palestinian Christian. And there we learned different Bible studies. Basically, we learned that all the patriarchs of the Bible, Abraham, Moses, even Jesus of the New Testament, were all Palestinian revolutionists. In fact, if you don't believe me, you must believe Hanan Ashrawi, the right hand of Yasser Arafat before he croaked. She said that Jesus was a Palestinian from my country. You can see that on clip as well. So, because tonight everybody here is expecting me to pick in one side. Some people think I'm an Islamophobe, I'm a racist or a hate monger. Tonight I'll pick on everybody. I will pick on Christians, I will pick on Muslims, I will pick on Jews. Because it's one thing to pick on somebody without looking at the log in your own eye. I will pick on the Christians because we didn't learn proper education in our Christian schools back in the Palestinian areas either. In fact, at Columbia University, which Ahmadinejad was allowed to speak, just a speech like this, the public weren't allowed to come in here or speak, yet Ahmadinejad was allowed to speak, and I made it my position to criticize Christendom equally as much as I criticized Islamdom. And by the time I finished my speech and the question and answer time came, the first comment came from a student, Walid Shu'abat, "You are an Islamophobe." Then I asked the question, I said, if I'm an Islamophobe, why didn't nobody call me a Christian phobe? After all, I exposed Martin Luther, the reformer, who wrote The Jews and Their Lies, as something that is evil. Why did nobody call me a Christian phobe? Why am I only titled as an Islamophobe? Because we live in a culture that you are not supposed to, you can criticize any religion, but when you criticize Islam or you critique the religion of Islam, you have some sort of hostility or some sort of a problem, because in the Muslim culture, it's a different culture than the Western culture, in which if you criticize the religion of Islam, it is considered racism from that culture. However, in the American tradition, the American way of life, criticizing any religion is a freedom of speech. I grew up finally going to the government school from 5th grade all the way to high school. And by the time I reached high school, I remember my educators, Sheikh Naim Ayyad and Sheikh Zakaria, graduates from Al-Azhar University of Egypt. Al-Azhar University of Egypt is the largest university in the Middle East that graduates Muslim scholars and Muslim clergy. It is the #1 university par excellence in graduating and producing Muslim scholars. And by the time I got to high school there, I learned the art of martyrdom, the art of shahada, that the most noble thing in your life is to die as a martyr. In fact, I remember the very verse in the Quran that we had to learn in school. وَلَا تَحْسَبَنَّ الَّذِينَ قُتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ أَمْوَاتٌ بَلْ أَحْيَاءٌ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ يُرْزَقُونَ. Do not think that the ones who die in the cause of Allah are dead, but are alive with Allah, receiving His blessings. What kind of blessings? No, it's not 70 virgins. It's 72 mansions with 72 beds, and on each bed 72 virgins. In fact, we learned eschatological education as well, because I get also criticized for my speech regarding Christian or biblical eschatology. Walid talks about Jesus coming back and creating Armageddon. I get all these kind of criticism. However, I remember my Islamic eschatology that I memorize it even in the Arabic language from the Hadith. لا تقوم الساعة حتى تغلب طائفة من المسلمين طائفة من اليهود قيل أين يا رسول الله قال في بيت المقدس وأكناف بيت المقدس. The day of judgment shall not come to pass until the tribes of Islam defeat the tribes of Israel in Jerusalem and in the surrounding nations. And then the trees will cry out and the stones will cry out. The gharqad tree will cry out, there is a Jew hiding behind me. Come, O Muslim, come and kill him. Such as the solution to the Jewish problem. The women, of course, are to be taken as captive because it's not permitted in Islam to kill the women. I remember question and answer time. Students were curious, asking questions. You said we can take the Jewish women as captives of